You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. A Place at the Table can be viewed for rent on Vimeo.com on demand /A Place at the Table STEM. Through Cottontail's podcast, the Silicon Valley Black Project will continue to recognize the contributions made by African Americans. We will be featuring African American professionals, technologists in the fields of engineering, administration, and entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and present. Today, we are talking to Dr. Grace Carroll. She has been a teacher, researcher, and mentor to many successful African Americans that attended Stanford University, University of California, Berkeley, and Howard University. She encouraged, informed, and counseled African Americans to achieve success. Today, in her so-called retirement, she has started a book publishing company with her family members, producing books for children. Let me talk to Grace today. So tell me about you. Who is Grace Carroll?
I'm a 71-year-old Black woman who has 2 grown children and going on 11 grandchildren, and retired educator, and basically extremely opinionated, and I guess I've been dedicated to dealing with empowering young Black folks.
Yes, you
most
have.
of my career.
And you've done it extremely well. I think what I admire is the work you've done with the young Black women that I see associated with you and how you empower them. So when did all that start for you?
Well, I think when I was in college, I did not have a Black female professor at all. I had a couple of the great Dr. St. Clair Drake was on my dissertation committee, and he came when I was an undergraduate, so I had courses from him, and 2 or 3 other prominent men. But in terms of having a professor, there were no Black women professors, and I always felt that if I ever taught, I would really focus on the women, although it just seems like there were so few. So when I ended up teaching, it seems like I ended up adopting a whole lot of daughters who have stayed the course. I mean, I've been retired and out of that for a while. I left Berkeley at the end of the 90s and went to Howard. And one of my students came through and got her master's there. And actually 2 of them came through from Cal who got masters and worked with me when I was working at Howard. So yeah, so it started early, I think. And I had one other cousin, and we had lots of cousins, but she and I were the oldest. So we also had caregiving responsibilities for younger sibs and cousins and stuff. So I think the whole maternal thing just was very early. And then, my mom, since she's not from here, I was always the one who sort of interpreted reality and interpreted Black reality very early. And so, yeah, I don't know when this all started, but
it's kind of like part of your makeup. That's who you are.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's part of my DNA. I think you're right.
So it started in your college days, or when you began to teach, or was it way before then that you started looking at people of color and women, especially women, and saying, we got to be together. I got to help this kid.
Way before that. I mean, unfortunately, our legacy of colorism and racism, impacted our communities in such a strong way that I don't know if you remember, but I have a cousin who's also named Grace, and she was a few months older than me. She was born in April. I was born in November. We lived together when I was like 2 through 3 or 4, very young. But I really remember, my grandparents lived sort of on this farm, sort of sharecropping farm, and my father was in the hospital. So my mom and I stayed with my grandmother, many aunts, and this one cousin. And at that time, she was a little taller than me, very dark skin, and it was very clear to me that people, the color made a difference because people would come over and run their fingers through my hair, which I did not appreciate at the time because my mother said I would curse at them in Japanese because I was really young. But I don't. But I remember them saying things like, um, "Oh, you have good hair," and my cousin would be right there, and the implication was, "Well, what's wrong with her hair?" And I remembered that comparison for years when we would go back to Delaware. And that drove me very close. That cousin and I were very, very close. And I felt, even though she was slightly older than me, I always felt like protective of her because I felt that the world was giving her a negative role that had nothing to do with who she was, just because of color, texture of hair, and more African features. And I think from that point on, that became something that was very uh, near and dear to what I ended up ultimately doing, which research around colorism and research about, internal oppression and trying to be clear about this is nothing of our making, but it has impacted our communities so tremendously that, you know, the legacy has kept us
Yes,
down in many ways.
yes. Well, now, when you graduated from Stanford, what was your next? What did you do next?
Well, when I was at Stanford, I was working as a grad student at Stanford for a while, had big money from Boys Town, a little Boys Town Institute. And there were a few professors there that I had worked with and I continued to work with. And one of their projects was to look at young teen mothers uh, and mothers who were single parents. And I don't remember exactly what the research question was, but it was based in Oakland, and I wanted to move to Oakland. So, and I knew I didn't want to necessarily take a professorial. I didn't want to teach college at that time. I mean, I had some real issues with being judged by peers that I didn't necessarily think were peers because I had some not so good experiences. So I took a job with Boys Town as a research associate, I guess, and collected data in Oakland and used that as a way to transition to move to Oakland. Um, and I remember, I remember being pregnant at the time with Jelana. Tajay was already born, but when I was making this transition, and I remember, you have to catch these folks where you can. And my brother had this friend, and I used to hire him to help me locate and find where some of these. She says, everybody cashes their check at the liquor store, and I'll never forget I was hanging outside the liquor store and he told me, you just can't hang out here. You got to act like you're drinking. So he'd get a can of soda, put a brown bag on it. And he said, yes, sip it like it's a beer. And I said, boy, people are going to think I'm terrible. I'm here big and pregnant outside of a liquor store holding a brown paper bag. But it was successful in reaching the target population that we needed to talk to at the time.
Appearance is everything, huh? Did that come up in your research as one of the points that you had to have this outward appearance?
Well, I think people know that people are more likely to talk to people who they think are more like them. So I think that was already known. I did I didn't go into detail of what I did to make myself more like people that I was trying to talk to, but it worked out fine.
So, how did the research come out? Did they have they used the information?
I'm not even sure how they use that research, but I do know that my time there introduced me to the late Jean Carew, the psychologist, and as a result of that, meeting and interaction, I fully moved to Oakland by opening a small nonprofit with her and also the late Marie Peters at UConn. And that's when we opened the Institute for Developmental Studies and we looked at teen mothers specifically. Now, I know what happened to our research, but I don't remember exactly what happened to all the Boys Town research.
So, what happened with the teen mothers research with your nonprofit?
Oh, basically, we worked with the government and looked at children being reared at home versus young toddler and infants. And, just looked at, I mean, she developed this coding scheme that has been since used. She talked about how, you know, it's so important to be verbal with your kids, and that kids who had a lot of verbal stimulation, you know, became more verbal, and looked at the kind of environments some people were in. Some were really rich with things that were educational, books and those kind of. And this was all predated the computer, and so I don't think it was anything groundbreaking, but just proof that what we think about education and being involved in interaction with very young children, that they're much smarter and, you know, far more gifted than we give them credit for being, that parents who spoke more with their kids and interacted more with their kids were far more verbal, etc. So, as I said, nothing groundbreaking, but it was good to see that with our Black families, that that was very, very important as well.
So did that information go then to people who were teaching, say, kindergartners and second graders, or opening up nursery schools? And
I think it really went into a lot of government reports. It was government funded, but we made a point of doing presentations to those target populations that were near and dear to us.
how about early learning programs? Do you think they used that material?
Well, at that time, we worked with, I think it was called the Four Cs of Alameda County, and they had programs throughout. And we worked with a teen parent assistant program with Dorothy Patterson. Uh, so I actually taught a class using those things that we learned for teen mothers. And we did further studies, and it's just amazing that you know, that data was able to be used. And I think it was able to be used because we weren't necessarily based at a university and just doing it through a university vehicle, that we were actually in the community and doing work with those in the community.
So really, you've been a researcher most of your life.
Yeah.
So then, when did you end up going to Berkeley? And is that where you got your
Well,
PhD,
I
or?
no, I got the PhD, I told you, really early, um, in 75. I didn't go to Berkeley to 89. I guess 87 and 88. Gosh, the late Bill Hayes and Bill Banks and Reggie, uh, they all invited me to teach a course. They knew the work I was doing, so I would come in and teach a course. It was a course on Black families in contemporary America. And then I taught one of Bill Hayes' course in Black psychology. Because of the nature of the kind of things I talk and deal with, most people think I was a psychologist. I guess early in 89, I was invited by the students to speak at one of their conferences off campus. And they said, "You just come, and you got a hotel room, and all you have to do is do this." And it sounded really good. It was a nice little break. So I went. And while I was there, they sort of bum rushed my room and said, "Look, we're going to protest, and we're going to ask for an office for African students, and we're going to do this, that, the other, and we want you to be the director of that program." And I just looked at them like they were crazy, and I it was like it just took me so. I had no anticipation of this, and so I told them, "Well, look, I would do these things under certain circumstances, and one of them was that Black being the name, African American being the name of the position, because I know that's what my commitment was, and I didn't want every student coming into my office. And so the other one was that it'll be task oriented. I didn't want to be sitting in the office from 9 to 5. I just, at the time I was doing consulting work, and I wanted to be able to continue that because I knew universities didn't pay much. And then the third thing was that if we should have an office, it needs to be on central campus, because I had seen the time that I was there, they'd put things out way out in Channing on these satellite offices. And, if you're working with volunteers, by the time they get to the office and then they got to get back to class. So those are my three things. They basically were very successful. They had a few little glitches. One of the glitches was that they were redoing the Cesar Chavez Center as it stands now, the big student union. And they were redoing other places, and we were in portables. But it was a summer, and I thought they were going to find it. And then I think someone told me, well, no, we're going to move the office and it's going to be off campus. And I said, well, then I quit. Dan Bogan was the vice chairman at the time. And he came and said, you can't quit. I said, yes, I can. I made these requirements and these things are important to me. And so he did his magic and he got us an office in the newly, well, at the time, temporarily in Wheeler Hall, which is on campus. But then our permanent office was at Cesar Chavez Center. And that's where I think it remains today. A lot of things have changed about it, but it was very centrally located, easy to find, and so I didn't quit until until 1999. I stayed for a decade.
So, what was some of the research that went on in that organization?
Well, we didn't do much research. We provided services and training, basically trying to figure out what kind of things led to a higher retention of Black students. And over that 10 years, the retention rate significantly did increase. But simultaneously, the Carroll report and anti-affirmative action, the numbers decreased to a point where in 99, I resigned. When I came in, there were close to 250, 300 Black students. And that was down from the years, freshmen, I'm talking about freshmen. That was slightly down from the heyday where there were 400 or 500. But no, I think when I first came, there were 300 to 400. Then it dropped down after the Carroll report to 200 and something. And then when the anti-affirmative action stuff came about, I think they said that the year I left, there were going to be like 99 Black students as freshmen. So I said,
Yeah, what's this about?
yeah, well, I knew what it was about. I just decided I didn't need to be about that. So, so I resigned and went to Howard.
How long were you teaching at Howard, or were you doing the same sort of thing at Howard?
Well, at Cal, I taught two courses. I continued to teach the Black Families course for a while, but then I also taught incoming freshman seminar for freshmen coming in, just their transition, and was able to also have a course where students could work in the community and get credits. It wouldn't go toward a major or anything like that, but at least they can get credits for that work. So I did more teaching there. When I went to Howard, it was um, to be the assistant director at CRESPAR. That's a mouthful. CRESPAR stands for, let me see if I can remember, the Center for the Research on the Education of Students Placed at Risk. And it was a partnership between Howard University, Dr. Wade Boykin, who's head of it, and College Park, University of Maryland, Slavin and University of Maryland. And there were different pods in the center that did research on teaching, on various aspects of education, counseling, etc. And basically, my job was, I think I was officially the external direct. I don't know what the official title was. I'm not going to lie. Basically, everybody did everything to keep the organization going. But I worked with the different groups and a lot of graduate students. Uh, helped create some of the products, that kind of stuff.
So you've been taking a deep dive into African culture, or African American culture, for the most of your adult life.
Oh, that's been my mission. As I said, this is my DNA. I love it. I've never veered from that. I remember when I did finish the PhD and I had the kids, I got offered some really good work back east, um, doing development and also doing, what is it when you, um, diversity. It wasn't called diversity then, they had some other thing. And then I worked with a psychologist on employee assistance stuff. But my passion was all, I didn't take any of those for a variety of reasons. One, I believe family is very important. And my immediate nuclear family, nieces, nephews, brothers, all were in this area. So all of us had kids around the same time. So there was like 6 of them that sort of all grew up together.
So you had a great resource right there in the house.
Absolutely.
So how did your work affect your family, your immediate family, your children, let's say?
Well, my children were guinea pigs on quite a few. I remember that first project I was telling you that moved me here with um, the Institute for Developmental Studies. We had to develop the observation schemes and the assessments. And at that time, you had a heavy old video camera that you carried around. It wasn't a little teeny thing. And they would videotape. At that time, my daughter was the same age as all of our target population. So she was the guinea pig for a lot of that, unbeknownst to her. And basically, I think the way it impacted my immediate children was that it taught me things that were positive around child rearing. I went to the extreme, I'm sure. Um, I think I have all black books, all black books. I colored all the children black in the books. Um, I know I did go to the extreme. Even though I come from a biracial family, my mother's Japanese. I remember my kids were very small. Mixed couples didn't come to my house. I would meet them out. I just wanted them to have role models, seeing black families. Um, yeah, as I said, I colored all the things black, and we celebrated Kwanzaa from the very beginning because I think those 7 principles are probably the best set of principles across all religions.
So, how do you think all of this focus on black ethnicity, how did that affect or help your children?
I thought it taught them black empowerment. I've always taught my I think I went overboard on this too. I said, it's not the idea to go to college to get a job, it's to get some skills so you can create jobs. And I don't think either one of my children have ever had regular jobs.
In their life.
But they're self-sustaining and they don't ask me for anything, so I'm not complaining.
And there you go. Well, then it worked.
Yeah, some of the things every now and then I do have to smile. I remember when they were young and wanted to get, designer this and that. And I said, I don't want to pay extra money for someone else's name on stuff. If I want to see something that I won't pay for, I want your name on it. And now that Tajay is with hieroglyphics and I see their logo and everything, I feel really proud. Although I had nothing necessarily to do with that directly, I felt very proud that that's happening. And then my grandson, my daughter's oldest son, has his own little line on shirts and things as well that I've been supporting with gifts to friends and when new babies are born. He has one little T-shirt that's like a little leaf thing, and it says something like "Becoming Human," and it's a onesie, and it's so cute. So I really feel proud that they're doing.
And well, you should. And well, you should. Now, tell me about this book club that you have. This is your granddaughter, right? Tell me about that and how that evolved from where did it start and how did it evolve?
Well, I was going to retire at 66 no matter what because I heard that at 66 you can get your Social Security and still make some money and they not take a whole hell of a lot of out of your check. So I was waiting to 66, but then I realized at that time my granddaughter was wow, three. She was like 3 or 4 years old, and she was just learning how to read. And literacy has been something I've always had a passion about, only because I saw brilliant kids at Cal and Howard, brilliant black kids who clearly were smart, great thinkers, because I felt there was a lot of gaps in smart kids, black kids who were not really taught basic rules. And so my granddaughter and I, she loved animals. And so we came up with the idea of doing a book called Kira's Animal Alphabet Alliterations. And she helped me come up with animals with every letter. And I've done a lot of research around child development and learning. And I knew that our kids didn't need baby words, that when you speak, this from the very first study I ever did, when you speak multisyllabic words to kids, they will remember them and learn them, so that whole baby talk or they can't learn it was really not true. My work at Crestbar taught me that, Dr. Boykin's work talks about verb action, that kids, when there's action in the story, they'll remember it better. So we had these high expectations and we had these wanted to do movement. And also, I knew that kids, when she was trying to find an animal with V, the only thing she could think of was vulture. And I didn't want a vulture, and she didn't want another bird. So we looked it up. We went to Google and we learned that a vicuna is a deer. All these wonderful animals. And I think we got to V, and I learned something too. So our V is vicuna violin virtuoso. And so I figure everyone can learn from the book. It's sort of tongue twisters, but at the same time, the kids are learning their alphabet, and there's action on page. Kangaroos are kicking in it. Every double page spread, there's a picture of Akira doing something, hiding behind the dueling dragons, or all these kinds of things. So my son knew an artist, and he did such a great job that I said, if we do it as ABC, let's create something that can be instructional. So I did all the paperwork to start the nonprofit, simultaneously asked my daughter to help me. And we ended up, my goal was to have, at the very beginning, just 12 books, one for every month before I did any PR, before I did any, but people wanted us to do readings and stuff, and we did, but we ended up doing 12 books. And that's what I used that retirement chunk of money to print and get together and publish. Um, and so we have three different series. One was the Akira series, which the ABC, there's a homonym, antonym, and synonym book in that series. Mischievous Akira, Akira's Happy Tale, and Akira Same Game. Then my daughter did 5 that we focused on parts of speech, the 5 most used parts of speech: nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and pronouns. But then the last 3, I was on the board of Not in Our Town, my anti-bullying group, and I knew how terrible bullying and how bad it had gotten. So one of the books is called The First 10 Days. I had to make it do something with language and skills. So I wanted to teach cardinal and ordinal numbers. And so we did this book where every day the girl sort of gets bullied. And actually, it's um, in the 10th day, but she's really strong. It's not like we're saying don't bully or be a upstander. We're saying, I think it starts the first day of school, they called me names, but I strutted through the hallway just the same. So it's that kind of cadence. The 10th day of school, they finally got what I was all about. I love me just the way I am. Too bad it took them 10 whole days to figure it out. So it's that kind of thing for the first 10 days. So I wanted to do something, that was my anti-bullying book. And then I also knew through research that vegetables are so important, diet is very important. So we have a book called Veggies Don't Scare Me at All. And that was book number 11. And then we had one, as I said, I do Kwanzaa. I used to do it here every year. And one of the things that was a real helpful aid was haiku poems, because little kids, they don't have to rhyme, they just have to know how to count to 5 and 7. And so we have a book called Can You Haiku? So those are the 12, the 5 parts of speech, the 4 others that I mentioned, the Cura series, and these 3. And once we got that together, we got a website, we started doing readings. But the point I wanted to do and why I did the nonprofit was so that we could give these books away. So we've had serious, we've had, like in during COVID, we did one in East Oakland to um, to start off Hiro Day. This year, since we had that connection, we did one in West Oakland at West Oakland Martin Luther King School, where we were in the parking lot. We had cars and people checked in, and we targeted unsheltered and homeless folks and children. And then we did one in San Jose with the what's it, not National, it's the Mexican Heritage Plaza. Beautiful facility. Uh, we went down there and we partnered with friends, another nonprofits down there, and each time we gave away, one were bags that said tools for schools, another one was a cares book club. But we would make the bags and we would put anywhere between, depending on how much we had raised, we put in between 3 and 4 books. We put in crayons, um, notepads, um, stress reliever toys, the little things that people squeeze and stuff, rulers, a pencil bag. So they were pretty loaded, and the families were so appreciative. So So that's what, our goal was to get them out there in that way. And the sales of the book that are online, we made a commitment that it would be cheap or inexpensive. And even though it was limited runs, which was very expensive, we made sure all our books, all the books, each book, all is the same size, 32 pages, same look. They have that sort of glossy, um, heavy kind of, not cardboard, but very heavy stock covers. And we keep them at $9.99, and we just have a commitment to doing that because we figure, everybody can. You spend $9.99 on a coffee and donuts, so we figured a parent could spend $9.99 on a book.
Oh, one cup of coffee at Starbucks.
For real. So anyway, that's how it started, and then it sort of took on a life of its own, as I said, with these, the board. I don't have a board of directors that is, to bring in money. My board of directors are people who care about Black children and good Black educators who can give me content and directional kinds of stuff. And I figured we can raise the money. So the first year we did a big Kwanzaa event or opening event or inaugural kinds of events. We did that at Red Bag Cat Coffee once. We did it at the Oakland Children's Museum, and so we gathered this little following. And I guess year before last, we raised enough money to do an animation of the ABC book that we gave away free as our Kwanzaa gift. So we did that at Bishop O'Dowd High School in the auditorium, and it's sort of a call and response. They hear someone reading these armadillo artsy antics, and then they see the armadillos drawing, and that goes all the way through. You hear an adult say it and a child say it. And then the second half, the adult says it, and a little finger comes up and says, now your turn. And the kids have to say it. And it was so wonderful hearing the kids shout out, Falcon fearlessly flying, after every time. And so it made everyone feel very good. And so this year, we made it a mission to try to do a second animation of our goal is to, after that, we said we're going to do another one next year for Kwanzaa. And we did. We did Mischievous Akira, the Antonym book this time. And so we're just getting over that whole event and what happened because we did a half-hour sort of live launch of that for Kwanzaa. And so we have 2 more years, so 2 more books. So we have, there really is, this could go on for a long time doing different things. It's not done in a giant way, but I think people feel good about the work.
Well, I can hear this retirement's out the window, so forget it. But that is amazing. I'm just so amazed at the idea of teaching language at that level. I mean, like that.
Well, I think that just was way people assume children should learn things, and I just think it's false.
Absolutely false.
I think it's just, I think I think it's a false paradigm. We need to shift it, and I always.
You had a mother who had language capabilities.
Kind of, I would say 1.5.
Okay, but still, you had exposure to a second language, that kind of thing. And I had a mother who never spoke like a child, spoken baby language to her children. We spoke regular English, and so by the time we got to the 6th grade, one of the teachers had a conference with my mother, and he said, well, Mrs. Washington, your children don't talk like the other children. Now, this is a majority Black school. And she said, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, you know. And she says, no, I don't know. And he said, well, well, they don't speak like the other kids. And Mom says, well, their father was born and raised in California, and I came to California when I was 10 from Oklahoma, and this is how we talk to our children, so how are they supposed to speak? What he was trying to say was we didn't have a Southern accent. We didn't, we looked him dead in the eye when we spoke.
You didn't have the stereotypical Black behavior.
My dear, that is quite a career that you've cut out for yourself. This is what, your 3rd iteration of Grace Carroll? Or 4th?
I would say good 4. Yeah, at least 4.
But then there's a piece there, the mentoring of young black women. I've seen that part of you. I've met those, seen you in your when you're engrossed in that. And well, when we went to Mexico, most of those young women there were people that you had influenced in some way.
Yeah, I feel like I now have my doctors, my attorneys. I have all of that now of former students. I mean, even when I was an undergraduate, I was the house mom of the first African American freshman theme dorm. There was such a paucity of Black faculty that the late Bill Dement and his wife agreed to be the faculty residents. And so they moved their 3 children into the small house so that we could have this Black theme house. And because he was the MD, and there was high demand, a lot of kids, they were somewhat screened. So out of that 30 to 40 Black students, 2/3 of them are now physicians. He helped start the first Black pre-med society. It's just amazing. He passed this past year. But, I felt.
Was this at Berkeley? Was this at Berkeley?
No, this was at Stanford. I was a senior. I was a senior, undergraduate senior at that time. But those, so now I really feel that we know doctors out of every single profession as a result of those students. And, they're just 3 and 4 years younger than I am because they came in as freshmen. I was a senior.
Yeah, but you're the big sister.
Yeah, I feel like a couple of them have remained very close as friends up to now. And I think being that safety net for the young women is an important role that mentors play because too often they don't. I've been really blessed to have all the things I need to be able to share. But I know there are people, there's students who come who worry about clothing. I remember one young student told me once, she didn't know she was having enough clothes to come to Cal. And, these little things that if you have no clue what happens, that's why I thought that freshman class was so important because, we had students coming who, going to college, they don't know the difference between a BA, a BS, a MA, MFA. I mean, little basic things like that were part of that lesson that we need to talk to among ourselves. You make some assumptions that when the child is 18, they're going to know X, Y, and Z. And there are huge gaps, but it has nothing to do with their intelligence. It has something to do with the educational system and the content of what they've been taught.
And could be, like their parents have told them, you got to get an education with no idea what that meant. All they knew, it was the right thing to do. And God, God bless them, they made sure those kids got that education. But the child was kind of left out there to figure out what that education, how in the world they were going to get it. Well, if you had to give me a summary of your career and life, what would you say it is?
I feel I've been exceptionally blessed to be able to have the support and the luck to do the things I love to do, which is really bind family, both blood and extended, and to help empower young people. That's about it.
That's pretty good. If you think about the number of young people, like you say, that you've helped over the time, you've been very successful.
Well, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
And it all comes back, as I said. I feel like I don't ever have to feel stressed about finding attorneys, accountants, doctors, lawyers. I feel I have a personal connection with someone who's going to at least be able to do it or know someone who can do it for me.
They've either eaten at your table or read one of your texts or been in one of your classes.
Or lived with me.
There you go. So tell me, what is the name? If someone was interested in getting in the book club, how would they go?
Okay, the book club itself is sort of a misnomer in the sense that it's not basically a club. That's the sort of what it originally planned to be. But there's some wonderful things one could learn about books and about language. And that's on our website, which is www.akirasbookclub.net. And we have a YouTube channel that's under the publisher name of Wordsmith J.
Okay. And how do you spell Akira?
Akira. Actually, it's a Japanese name that we just really like, although in Japan it's a man's name generally. But on the website, you'll find, the books, how you can order the books. It links to a Shopify site. You can also see the two anime, well, at least the first one is there because all of it's on YouTube. From the very beginning, you'll find little videos of when Akira was saying, "Hi, my name is Akira." She was like 4 and she was so grown. It was hilarious. Uh, and the half-hour live show is also on the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel is Wordsmith J. I think it's comma LLC. The WORDSMITH J. And people say, why didn't you put JR like the company? I said, because J stood for Jelana, and she's the one who wrote 8 out of the 12 books, my daughter. So it's Wordsmith J, comma LLC, and that has all the short videos and the half-hour ones that, not the half hour, I guess the 10 to 12 minute ones that represent the 2 books that we've already had. And please check out the antonym Mischievous Akira on that on both the YouTube, the most recent animation. And we're looking forward. So we know the next one is going to be the synonyms or homonyms. We're not sure. We have to sit down and talk to our animator, but I just love it when the kids see it and participate. I also helped create a Saturday school in Seaside called the Eminata Project, which I love. It's in the 4th year. In during COVID, what they do is instead of the in-person all get together, it's the whole idea of teaching sort of Afrocentric habits, rituals, and routines, and seeing Black speakers in different fields. And so it's a great program, all I can say. But during COVID, after a speaker comes and it's all via Zoom and the kids all sign in, and there's a segment after the speaker leaves, which is consistent when we had them in live, which is called Read Loud and Read Proud, where we break up usually in age specific or skill specific groups, and we do out loud reading with them. And during COVID, everybody's all together. And so what they read this time is they showed the video of a Mischievous Akira. And the kids, the first half where they were talking about going up the stairs and sliding down or jumping on the bed and falling off that kind of thing. At the end, they're asked, and the opposite of up is, and you heard the kids all say, down. It was so cute. So it was the first time I've ever seen the kids respond to it. We've given it out. So I'm really proud of that.
Well, now, if you could look back to your teenage years before you got into college, what would you tell young Grace in those days?
What would I tell myself? Maybe not being so, maybe I should be less stubborn. I was always headstrong, which probably got me in trouble at times, but I was always old. I mean, yeah, that's how come it's hard for me to get angry at my crazy granddaughter who's just hyper, but she's old. She's young and hyper, move like a little 2-year-old half the time, even though she's 9, but she's an old spirit. And I think because of the situation with my mom and being the oldest child of 3 and just having brothers, I was always old and responsible.
So if you had to give yourself a title now, what would your title be?
I would still say teacher/mentor because that's what I do most. But it's so funny when you ask, what would you call yourself? And I told you I went overboard with the kids sometimes. And I'll never forget when they were really young. I mean, just starting to talk young. They asked I'd have them call me princess, queen, your majesty a lot. And someone says, why are you kids calling you your majesty? I said, well, no one else is going to do it. They don't know the difference. And sure enough, it was like, they were like getting ready to go to school when someone says, you call your mother your majesty? And they finally realized that's not typically what people call their mom. Your majesty, can we do this? Oh, yeah. That's the one that stuck the most, your majesty.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll, for your tireless work with the young men and women that have been inspired and encouraged to pursue their dreams and aspirations. To support Dr. Carroll's latest endeavor, you can find Akira's Book Club on her website at www.akirasbookclub.net and on YouTube, Wordsmith J, LLC. Thank you again, Your Majesty, and thank you for listening.